All right, so just more statist hypocrisy. There's no shortage of it. It's really easy to find anywhere you look, honestly, no matter which so called side you're looking at. Even the people who claim that they don't take a side oftentimes just end up contradicting themselves too, mainly talking about the libertarian statists, the minarchists, and stuff, the people who consider themselves classical liberals, um, and all of that self-contradictory collection of ideas. Obviously, classical liberalism I think is better than Marxism by a long shot. Even though they both fundamentally believe the same thing at the bottom of it all. Um, at least the liberals were trying to wrestle with freedom, right? Trying to wrestle with the concept of the state versus freedom, whereas Marxists, they attempted to wrestle with it and they decided to just concede defeat and roll over and say the state is the uh, what is going to usher in freedom, and it's like that's just complete nonsense. Okay, total Orwellian insanity. But so once again, political atheist page. I like to pick on them. I guess. I mean, they don't. I mean, I get random replies from people, but the page itself doesn't ever talk back. So, but this here again. If you can see my comment there, it is literally just the same old stuff. My comment, I'll just read my comment. You guys say this stuff like it even matters. We don't care what you want to spend your money on. And right, that is the whole, that's not the issue. It's your money. That's the part that you guys aren't getting. The problem is that you demand, and the state threatens everyone else fund the things that you want against their consent. Um, the problem is, it's hypocritical. Like, not only is it hypocritical, but it misses the point, the entire point here, right? Like, this is, I doubt this M person, most of the time when you're a socialist, it's because you do want to help people. I'll say that. Like when I was a Marxist and in the Communist Party, that I didn't join the party because I was like I want to enslave the world, right? Like nobody at the base level anyway, the common folk as it were, they don't run around thinking that they think this is liberation. Maybe the guys at the top who really know what this is all about and don't care about all this stuff. They realize that Marxism is a state worshiper's trap to have the state monopolize everything. But I'll just say it's hypocritical nonsense for you to talk about your personal tax dollar preference literally as a way to rationalize the fact that you ignore everyone else's choice by definition, right? I mean, because and this is just the same thing that you can argue with a minarchist who's like, well, the government should only tax for this, that, and the other thing, and nothing else. And you're missing the point that taxation is compulsory. It doesn't matter what you want it to go to. That's the whole thing that makes it taxes, is that it doesn't matter what you want it to go to. You're coerced to pay regardless. Um, so not only is it just kind of just like pie in the sky, naive, delusional fairy tale nonsense about, well, I think the robber should do this with my money after he steals it from me. It's just I say self-contradictory, hypocritical nonsense because the entire point of this post is to try to make oneself feel better or make one's position look more ethical to everyone else at the same time while the whole point of this argument is to force other people to pay for these abortions or whatever else the policy was. Like the abortion is an X, right? It's a variable. All of this is a variable. It doesn't matter what law it is, what particular tax they're talking about. It's all the same principle. Because in the end, if they say they support socialized medicine, which this page does, um, then that means that you think that people should be forced to pay for this so-called socialized medicine, regardless of what they would rather have their tax dollars go to, right? So it's like complete oblivious nonsense that these people repeat. And I thought this was a good example of that. And like I was saying, it's the same thing with the minarchists when they say, well, the government should only tax for a couple little things, only the really important stuff. There's that meme that goes around, government's so bad it should only do a couple really important things. Um, but it's the same thing because you've accepted the premise that the state should tax. So what you have said when accepting that premise is that you think it's okay for the state to coerce people to fund things against their consent. The problem with the statists is that they just don't follow all the way through and realize the implications on other people, or if they do, they don't realize the implications on themselves because in saying that you are also acknowledging, or they're not consciously acknowledging it, but in saying that the state should be authority, the state should have the right to tax, or does have the right to tax, then you're saying that your consent doesn't matter, because you have said the state has the right to rule, the state has the right to impose taxes, so you just need to shut up and pay. Or maybe if they're honest and consistent enough, they'll say, well, if I don't like it, then my only options are to vote, and if I lose and I really don't like it, then my only other option is to leave the so-called country, my house, and all of this, our collective property. We need to get off the commune if we don't like it. So, yeah, it's just, this one is just particularly interesting because it's being used in an attempt to, this whole thing is like a meta euphemism for the fact that they want to force other people to pay for the government healthcare system, against their consent, right? Regardless of what those other people would rather have their tax dollars go to. So, just mind blowing, blatant hypocrisy from these socialists. Which, if you're at all aware of any of this, then you already know that. But just had to make another video to put it out there on the interwebs for people to, just to say that I did my part bitching on the internet about these crazy socialists. But yeah, I guess I'll end there. Maybe I'll come back with another one. Being as is, it's one of the statist holy days to honor their dead, the people that they have sent off to die for political scams. Unfortunately, people take offense when I say that as an offense to the soldiers. But obviously sometimes if a guy's a total bonehead, yeah, he probably deserves some criticism. But at the same time, I feel pity for those guys. They're duped into that stuff, and that sounds insulting too. But I mean, that's, I'd say, less insulting than you're a sick maniac who just signed up to kill people for politicians. Because I mean, that's honestly a small percentage, I would imagine. But I think that I would think it would be disproportionately represented in the government military, that those individuals would line up and be. But statistically, overall, I think it's just because it's a small part of the population, and because of the way that the belief in government works, most people are probably just duped, and they don't understand all that, right? They don't understand really what's going on. I just saw a short the other day. Maybe I'll look it up and try to shout that guy out on here. Not like, I mean, the podcast he was on, obviously, I mean, I have like 200 subscribers, but I like to talk about stuff, so I'll try to find out who he was. But he was apparently a veteran, and he literally said exactly what it is. He's like, I started thinking. He said he started thinking about why he killed this guy in the Middle East, and he said, well, he was going for a gun. Well, why was he going for a gun? Well, because I'm breaking into his house at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, why am I breaking into his house at 2 o'clock in the morning? Well, because some politician said blah blah blah. And so he was like, I really don't feel like I fought for anything other than some politician's scam, and basically, and that's how, as we've seen it for years. And it's good, though, that interestingly too, I have several anarchist friends that were in the military, so I think that's a good way. I don't think it's a good thing, but I think it's a common thing that obviously people come out of the military feeling like they've been fucked over, because I mean, look at the history of it. That's pretty much all they do. So unfortunately, though, it seems like the people that come out of that, a libertarian or an anarchist, or at least skeptical enough of the state where they're not just going to swallow the next so-called Republican politician's bullshit, unfortunately that's a smaller number than continues to join and either just goes with the propaganda because they need a paycheck and they don't see any other options, or because they are just zealous state worshippers who believe all the propaganda and they want to wave the flag and think that they're actually bringing freedom. Anyway, completely separate rant. But yeah, this is just, it's pretty despicable, this right here. Like I say, I don't think this M person is trying to be despicable. I don't think that they realize how ridiculous this position is, how self-contradictory, and how it really is just like rationalizing your own authoritarian tendencies to want to force everyone to pay for the government healthcare system. Because that's pretty much, when you come to this page, you can be safe in assuming that everything is framed around that. Anything that talks about this, their position. Their position is they support AOC, they support Bernie Sanders, they want like a Swedish type socialist welfare state. So, yeah, so you already know where this is going. And also the thing is like, I didn't get to the last part of my comment there. I mean, they literally, I'd rather pay to kill the growing fetus instead of taking care of it after it's born. So it's like it's funny because they criticize the Republicans for not allowing abortion, which of course I agree with the lefties on that one. I don't think that the state should be making abortion illegal. That's ridiculous and it's definitely authoritarian insanity. But at the same time, they're kind of like using the same, they criticize them for saying like you can't get an abortion, but then once you're out of the womb, they're not going to take care of you. And it's like, well, I mean, you think it's better to just kill the fetus rather than taking care of the human. So, you're just looking at this as an economic exchange just the same, which of course we all do. It's just, we have, most of us have a threshold where it's like, okay, you have to look at it some way in that way because it's the reality of the matter, but you can't view humans as just things. That's when you start getting into, but that's kind of how socialists are, right? Like, I mean, look at this post that they're posting here. Like, even though a Republican is an authoritarian and wants to tell women what they can and can't do with their bodies, uh, you know, well, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just, these guys have a more cold look at what humans are. Whereas the Republicans, they have a little bit more so-called warmth in that they view humans to have some dignity to a certain extent, and then they stumble all over themselves and contradict themselves with their nationalist bullshit. Because if they really believed that, then they wouldn't believe in immigration control and all this other stuff and meddling with other people's lives. And I mean, you might be against abortion, like the libertarians, not the new ones, this new breed that the MAGAcrats and the Mises Caucus have brought in. They're basically just a bunch of idiot Republican nationalists. Those guys, they all want abortion to be illegal because somehow that makes sense in their mind. But we don't think that the state should be meddling in that. But you can still be personally against abortion and say that's probably not a good thing for anybody, and it's probably not a good thing for society to just have such a nonchalant view of their offspring and such. But also, it's not my right to control another living autonomous human being's body in such a manner, so I can't by default advocate freedom and illegal abortions. But these guys, they get the abortion part, but they literally get like nothing else because all of their economics is just nonsense, authoritarian control of another human's body and their economic decisions. That's the part that they don't get, is that all of these economic controls are just human controls, because that's what the economy is. It's just humans producing and trading, and some of them stealing, right? But most so-called economists and what they're not going to, that's going to be like the black market, or that's the underground economy or the counter economy or something. But the economy is just humans making and trading stuff. So yeah. Anyway, I guess that's about it for this rant. I jumped off on a couple other points. I don't really have any. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this channel. I'm trying to find more time to at least do like little live streams where it's like, geez, look at this knucklehead, and then come on and drop 20 minutes of rant or something just to keep the channel active and to let people know I'm alive. And maybe another person will see it and be like, huh, I never thought of it that way or something. But yeah.